I'm Dr. Richard Laton. I'm a professor at California State University-Fullerton. That's Cal State Disneyland. If you don't know where Fullerton's at, we're right next to Anaheim. The university is exactly the same age as Disneyland, which makes it even more confusing. So it's a fairly new university. But anyway, today I'm going to talk to you about outreach. The program says, you're recruited to go give a groundwater talk to some, fifth graders. How do you do it? And I'm going to use some tools, not only the nice fancy sand tank models up here, but some other things you can do just pretty simply in order to teach the kids about groundwater. Because it's just like adults, you can't see it, so how do you tell them what's going on? They just trust you or whatnot. So we're going to go through some slides here, but the real gist of today is really get you up here, get your hands on some things. So don't mind the fact that slides are pretty short and fast here. Once again, it's going to be outreach. We're going to talk about how we can do that and some of the things. I've been teaching the groundwater to preschool kids all the way through graduate studies using the same tools you see up here. And we'll talk about where you can get them, how you can make them, and all their variations you can have with them. So what is a sand tank model? Sand tank model is a glorified fish tank that we put some sand in it. And you have an area where you have recharge, you have a place that has discharge, and you allow the water to move through the sand just like an aquifer. Okay? So the idea is to simulate what's really going on beneath our feet and show that and illustrate that. So in the standard design, you usually have what we call a recharge area. This is where we'll actually impose and put water into this side of the model. Over here we have a couple discharge points. So water will come into this thing and move this direction. We can use dye, actually food coloring. Okay? One of the things that I found early on is you can go down to your local Smart and Final and get food coloring by the gallon for a couple dollars, or you can buy it from the warehouse that sells these things for $50. So one of the things I'd recommend really quickly is go get some of the food coloring. It will make your fingers blue or red. But anyway, what we do is we can actually see in the well, and you'll see these, we can actually see the water level. And we actually have a confined aquifer and a unconfined aquifer system in this particular model. And these are the ones I've been playing with for some nearly 20 years. There was a group out of Stevens Point, Wisconsin that created some of the first ones. Jay Laird and some other people had some sand tank models for the Beto Zone stuff out of Arizona. But Stevens Point created a little groundwater flow model back in, I'd say the 80s, but maybe, is that about right? Probably. Yeah. The problem with their models were they were thinner and they didn't put porous enough material in there. So it took nearly an hour for that food coloring that you would inject in one of these wells to move across the model. Now, if you can imagine trying to keep the attention span of a third grader for an hour watching dye move across there. Now, I couldn't even keep your attention to watch that thing. Talking about watching paint dry. So at Western Michigan University, we had a professor, Dick Passero, who, saw what Wisconsin had done and said, you know what, it just doesn't work for the young kids. The stuff in Wisconsin was really designed for the college, but then they started doing some outreach with it, but still it's a fairly slow-moving model. Now, obviously, we can do one of two things, right? We can increase our head to try to drive the water through the system, or we can just coarsen it up and make it a little thicker and allow it to go through faster that way. So at Western Michigan University, they decided to, and they got a grant from the Keck Foundation to build this particular model here. And we put in a coarser material, and now it takes about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to get across there. So now they can actually keep the attention span of those young kids. Okay? And at the time, when I first started going to school, at graduate school at Western Michigan University, we had about 25 to 30 students making these things every week. I mean, we were putting these things out by the hundreds, okay? And we were selling them to, actually grants, we actually gave them away. So every school in the state of Michigan actually ended up having one of these, every elementary school and high school. They started to sell them to other people because people got interested in everything. And like most universities, they were pretty damn stupid. And they said, you know what, time out. We can't make money at this. We're a nonprofit, even though it was funding 25 to 30 students. So they actually sold it to a commercial group. So they no longer make them, and now there's a couple of groups around the country that make them. Envisions is the one that Dick Pissarro, when he retired, took over, and they make them. They run somewhere between $600 to $1,500 a piece, depending on what you want to put in them. But the basic model is you have some wells, you can measure stuff in there, you can pump these, and you can inject them. You can watch groundwater surface water action here with a little lake or a stream, or you can call this the ocean. In this particular model, we have a leak underground storage tank, we have a septic tank, so you can actually try to teach people about septic flow or how contamination moves, all by just showing how this dye moves through it. And like I said, we will be doing that here shortly. Here's just another version of it. This one has bedrock. And the bedrock in this model is styrofoam. We just took styrofoam and notched some fractures in it, and it goes pretty quickly, but nonetheless it was supposed to resemble fracture flow. And so this way you can show an alluvial aquifer over a bedrock aquifer by just putting some styrofoam down there. Ward's catalog used to sell some of these. They came as basically a plastic box, and you put your own aquifers in it. So if you want to have an aquitard, you could put it in there. If you want to make it all completely unconfined, you could do that. You basically made whatever you want out of it. And I do believe they still sell these. I don't know what the price is on them. But there again, you can make your own homemade ones. Okay? And one of the ones I have in my lab was this giant one. Here's a well, which actually has screens in it. We put a gravel pack around it, and we have all these little sampling ports in it. Yes, it's a little bit bigger and fancier, but it's just plexiglass, some tubing, and a bunch of sand. And you can just start putting them together in any configuration that you want. So this particular one was done for some research purposes to look at the mixing within a well column of various things. So they wanted to be able to inject dyes and see whether or not there was any stratification within the well screen based upon different flow mechanisms going across it. But that was just one use of it. Like, we use it for other things now. We can take the water out of it and use it for a Beto zone model. So it doesn't always have to be groundwater. Maybe it's how vapor flows through it. Here's some other ones that we made. These cost us about 150 bucks a piece to make and a lot of student labor. All they are is thin plexiglass that we had welded together to make a big box. I had to put the strapping on it because the first one we put the sand in blew out our welds on the plastic, so put duct tape around it. Damn if it doesn't work. So we have about 6 of these we had, and right now I got some screens that we're probably going to put on the side of one of them so we can actually show what the well would look like from the inside out. You know, kind of like what we do with the downhole video camera. These are a little less portable than the ones I'm going to show you, but nonetheless, people have these in 3-dimensional models for their whole watershed. There's just any number of ways you can do that. There again, here's some just different ones. You can see here's a large septic tank system one. Here's the leach field. Here's some of the dye going through the bedrock one. Here's another one with all kinds of channels. Looks like one of those ant farms you have. Essentially, that's what it is. This one here was trying to look at a gravel layer pinching out and see what the impacts would be with flow around it. So there again, it's as big as your imagination, or you can make it very specific. People have made these for court cases. You can make it very specific to your area. A lot of outreaches to watersheds try to make a 3-dimensional one. So they actually have sand on 3 dimensions around it and little pumping wells, all kinds of things that you can do with them. So what can it demonstrate? The way that I work with them is I start with the basics. I apologize, I have a tail here. I have my sun, and I have my clouds. Okay? So we start with the water cycle, okay? And keep it simple. And like I said, even for the older people, you just got to keep in mind, what is the driving mechanism for water? Well, it starts with the sun. You got to evaporate things. You got to precipitate. That moves the water. That drives the recharge, which then drives flow, and ultimately discharge and back to evaporation. So take the whole water cycle. You can put it all into context for the young kids, okay? Or for adults in a lot of cases. We can talk about groundwater flow. We actually have a lab that my students do at the graduate level and undergrad level, where they actually have used Darcy's law and actually calculate flow and porosity and permeability and hydraulic connectivity of each of the layers in it by just timing and looking at the head and where the water table's at and go through the whole equations that we do on a normal basis. For reality, they can do within the model. We can talk about confined aquifer conditions. You can actually show how you have either upward or downward flow in the two wells by looking at the elevation of waters in my wells in the confined versus the unconfined. We can actually cause artesian conditions in one of the wells by just turning a few valves, and you can actually have water come to the surface in one of the wells. So you can really show quite a wide variety of hydrogeologic conditions with one simple little model. And groundwater surface water interaction, contaminant flow is always a good one. The other thing is the dye is easy to see. It's for young kids, dye is a really easy one to see. But most contamination that we deal with, you don't really see it, right? We measure for it. Okay? Maybe you'll smell it and stuff, but you really don't see it. So one of the things you can do is inject vinegar and then take the pH in each of your wells, and you can actually track how a non-visible contaminant is moving through the aquifer. Okay? You can also take salt water, dye it blue, for example, put it off to one of the sides here, actually. Put salt water in here, dye it blue, and you'll actually see the fingering that we see in all our textbooks. So you can actually go saltwater versus freshwater interaction with these. Okay? It's a mess to clean up, but you can do it. Okay? One of the other things I do when I talk to young kids is I try to put it back into a learning environment. So they all like to see the model. They all come up, they put dye in it, make a big mess, get their fingers blue and red. But realistically, we got to remember we're trying to teach them. So depending on the age, I will start off with this little thing, and I use this all the way through the 6th grade. Okay, this little thing, I remember I stole it from somebody, but it's free on the internet. And then what I'll do is, even though that's the key, what I'll do is I'll blank off the things, and we'll start to talk about the whole water cycle and groundwater, and actually have them fill in the words. And so even the 1st graders are realizing what precipitation is. Now to them it may be rain, but nonetheless they start to fill in the pieces and see how that water cycle is by just using this little simple thing. And then we migrate to the model, and now it makes some sense to them what I'm trying to show them. Okay? So it's a kind of a two-pronged approach about how I get the young kids involved with it. And this can all be done fairly simply and quickly. Usually when I go to the elementary schools, I spend about 45 minutes in the classroom from start to finish. My biggest challenge is, like this morning, you have to have help to try to get all the water into the models and how to get rid of it. So setup is what takes almost as long as everything else. But anyway, I found this is a pretty nice little tool, and the kids really like it. They get involved with it. You challenge them. Of course, you always have one smartass in the room who thinks they know everything. But nonetheless, which doesn't change, by the way, when you get to college, it's still the same smartass. But nonetheless, you try to get pull out some of the kids that are not a little bit quieter, and they all know the answers. Just trying to get it out of them. So just being, I find this pretty nice and easy to use. So the question was, how do I make my own? Well, obviously there's commercial ones you can go buy. Okay? They have gotten higher than they should be. I really think I should start just making them again and start selling them, undercutting everyone else. But that would require effort and energy, and I'm lazy. So, how do you make your own? The easiest way is go get a fish tank. Now, one thing we learned over the past 25 to 30 years, I've been making these, and I've been making several of them recently for court cases and some other things, is you can go get the glass fish tank. They don't cost anything. You can go to yard sales and get them. The problem you'll have is you have to be really careful in moving it. Okay? Anytime you bump a corner on it, you're going to shatter it, and now you've got sand everywhere, and water and everything else. So what I do is I find the acrylic fish tanks. They're a lot more durable, and you can actually weld through some glues and stuff other pieces into it a lot easier, like those little straws you saw. You can do that with glass. It just is a little bit more challenging. The glass is certainly cheaper and easier to get hold of. There's no question about that. So I go find the plexiglass ones. They're a little bit harder to find, but I was watching with my kids the other day. There's a show called Tanked. It's one of those reality shows on the Discovery Channel. Well, it's based out of Vegas, and what they are is they build these acrylic fish tanks, the size of this room down to these miniature ones. And so actually in Las Vegas, there's a big acrylic company, and that's all they make is acrylic fish tanks. So I got to figure out where they're at and go stop by and see what scraps they have. Okay. When we first started making these at Western Michigan University, we bought the plexiglass tank, and we as students welded everything in it and filled them completely with sand. We did everything. In the end, we were making so many of them, they finally realized it was cheaper to go out to one of the acrylic manufacturers and say, here's what we want, you make this, and we just filled our sands in on it. And so you could take a lot of pictures and just go down to those guys, probably, I haven't done it, and just say, this is kind of generally what I want, how much is it going to cost to make it, and it's probably going to be considerably cheaper than trying to buy the commercial one. Okay? Then after that, you just need some PVC, sand, obviously food coloring. On the plexiglass ones, the nice thing is you can drill a hole out of it, which you can't do in the glass. So your drain is a lot easier, depending on how much flow you want to go through it. Some of the ones I do demonstration now is just, I have 3 of them. One is just a plexiglass tank filled with sand, nothing else in it. The next one is sand with a clay cap on it. So I clayed the whole top. The next one has half clay. And so you can show how in the first one you can put dye in it. It's not confined to aquifer. It goes throughout the whole aquifer. The next one, when you put dye on it, it does not go through the clay unit. So it shows how clay can protect aquifers from contamination. The third one shows how water, as it's flowing, can go off the end of that clay and contaminate things below. So that way, in three different models, rather than trying to have one, I can show simply how it's going. And those were really simple to make. They took us maybe an hour to make those 3. So it really doesn't take too much. But like I said, from experience, I would go with the plexiglass. So with it, you can have very simply, you have to have a place where it's recharging. So one side, you have to load up with water. Somewhere, if you're loading on one side, you have to have it exiting on the other. So you can just have one drain in the bottom, or 2 drains in this case, one above a confining unit. And this way allows water to come in and move from one side to the other. The straws, or the little plexi wells in here, by putting them at different things. Now, none of these are screened. None of the ones we've ever used in any of these little tanks are screened. All they are is piezometers. The only place they're open is in the bottom. So it's just a hollow tube down to this point. So it's measuring the head at the bottom of each of these. And so therefore you can actually get your gradients and see how things are varying throughout your model. Okay. So any questions on that phase of things? Like I said, this part was going to be fairly short because what I want to do is get people up here because it's all about playing with them. And so I can get rid of this damn thing. So stand up and get up here. Come on up. Okay, so what amounts to is, and here's some, here's some, samples. You got sand, you get different layers, different ones. You can do a simple porosity test if you wanted to. You grab your little 100 milliliter beaker, pour in sand to 100 milliliters, then take some water and measure how much water you put in it. 20 milliliters of water, you got porosity of 20%. So you can show them that for more advanced students and whatnot. But what it amounts to is, as this thing is moving, start to inject dye. Okay, good. Yeah. The only problem with these, you got to be in the front to see what's going on. But basically, you start injecting their dyes, different colors and stuff, and it begins to move through. And you can control how fast or how much head on there. If I wanted to move it over, slow it down. You can measure, take a line and put across there and actually see what the gradient is on the water, both in the upper and the unconfined aquifers. They're pretty darn simple from that standpoint. There are several levers on this design, so I can stop the lake. I can open the stream. I can open and close different valves, and that actually allows different things to happen. We can flood one of our so you can just time it how fast it goes across. There again, you can slow it down by decreasing the gradient, increase it by increasing the gradient. You know, it's simple hydrogeology 101. And
Jim, what's the best way to clean the color out after make a demonstration? Like the reds in the sand, and I would see that the trail left over.
That would be Clorox.
Will that kill the color?
It kills the color. Good. So what it does do though over time, what's Clorox do to clay over time? It will break them down. So these aren't, I mean, I've had this one for nearly 20 years. You'll notice that my aquatards are slightly leaky against the acrylic screen because it's dried out a little bit. Then for pumping, you can actually just stick one of these guys in there and begin to pump. Notice my water that I'm pumping. You can actually change the flow line, and you can show them this is what you're drinking. And you can create a nice cone of depression. You can measure that. One of the things I didn't bring with me because I was busy and I didn't get a chance to build it is obviously pumping like this it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it works. It's the poor man's version. One of the things that I had before and it kind of broke on me was we used the pumps from your windshield wiper and have it on a battery and just put a permanent pump in there, and actually I just push it down and I can actually really draw the water in there and really pump it hard or vary it a little bit. So. Yeah. Yeah, they also use soda bottles and they just create a siphon on them. I found those to be less effective than this. But you can actually, show the nice flow lines coming up into the wells. You can show the mixing, the difference between aquifers and stuff. So, please come up, play, ask questions. With the pH, with putting the vinegar in there, you can do pH strips. You don't have to have anything fancy once again. By just pumping. This is a well, right? So let's pump that well. See the flow lines. You can actually show. Show capture for contamination. Show remediation. How a pump, remediation system may be a pump and treat will capture the stuff going by it. Where if you turn it off, it'll actually go past it. Oops. This is a good one to show regulators to maybe not be as up on things as they should be, or consultants that may not be as up on things as they should be. Hey Dan, have you ever gotten one of these actually in the courtroom?
Video.
Yeah. You can actually keep pumping and actually show how you clean it up. Flow lines changing. Dye or we go past. Any more dye? One more we go past?
Yeah, you need more dye.
Go ahead and play. Put more in. Obviously, you guys need more dye over there. You want to put some red dye and see how red and blue mix. One thing I will warn you is you do need paper towels, and you will get your hands blue or red. actually a filter because we found when we start pumping on them, sand will come up in them. So it's actually a cigarette filter.
Okay. So you have your well, your little plastic tube, is it just up against?
It's just glued right against the face. Nope, it's not. We did half ones. We did all kinds of things. We found just keeping the tube whole means less leaks. Yeah. And like I said, you can close off the valve on the bottom to make flow more vertical. You can open it up to keep it more, horizontal. And there again, the idea is you can build this to your region. You can, obviously this one's geared towards glacial geology in a lot of ways, but alluvial systems. But you have a bedrock system, you can make one for that. The 3D ones that they make, and we've made a few of them, is the same concept and same thing, except for we'll do the thing on all four sides, making sure the inside's hollow, otherwise the thing will weigh 1,000,000 pounds. So, but you can make it scaled and then put the landscape on the surface. So actually you're seeing a cross section on all four sides, hollow on the inside. Actually, we don't even put water on the inside, the water's only on the outside. But you can put pumping wells, show them where your well field is, in relationship to creeks and rivers. You get as fancy as you want or as simplistic as you want.
The aquifers, the midnight, modeling.
Just midnight. Yep. We used, what we had, which was we can go to the local contractor. Usually they'll give us one bag of midnight, and that would make 50 of these things. So.
What do you have? Is that a filter? What is that? What is right there? Back?
This is my pump.
Okay.
So what it's doing is pumping water from my reservoir in the back up to the recharge area and driving the water through the system. And this is just a simple fishing pump. That's all it is. You can put fancier ones on there, but we found these are $5 at the local PetSmart. They do break on us. That's the one thing that does break quite a bit on us. They get abused, and it has its flow meters on it. They don't work much, so you just put it on the maximum and go. Another thing is, once you put a little dye in, you can keep squirting water down on top of that, and you can push more of it out.
Can you clean the dye out of the sand?
You clean the dye out of the sand by running fresh water through it at the end, or Clorox. If you run this for a couple hours, you need to actually throw some Clorox in the back, and that'll clean up the dye. Just let it run through.
So how do you do the beta zone? How are you measuring or visualizing the beta?
Well, the beta zone, when this particular one I don't do it, but the other one we're doing is we're just watching water, we dye the water start with and let it come through and see how it passes. Same thing, Jay. Okay. Yeah. I have to turn off the valve in there, and I'm not going to stick my hand down in the water at this point in time. We're supposed to talk again this afternoon. There's a valve in the bottom down there I can shut down inside. When I shut that one, now water can't go on the bottom, it has to come up. Sure. Yep, that's your valve for it. Very bottom one down there, just need to turn it.
How do they get the lake here to this book?
Yep, there's holes on the lake, which there always are. Yep. Well, I usually, where's my students at? They're all sitting back there.
Yeah. Because you're sending their scholarship money.
Yeah.
Have you ever done any demonstrations on these where they were in a landfill?
Yep. We had we did a big, we did it, yeah. Showed the, various clays and, how some of them worked, some did. Those were made, we made each individual one to show 3 different scenarios. So, all this is water and sand, which is all nature is we're just trying to show, in a visual manner what we can't see, we can tell people about, what they don't trust us on. Everyone goes, how do the nitrates get my well? Okay, well, I can put stuff on the surface,
Yeah.
Roll to the right.
I think we're doing it.
Surface.
I think we're doing it out right now.
See how it goes right to the lake, looking into the well.
Did you do that to a regular septic tank with food filler in?
Yep.
What do you have on top? Is that just a sponge or
Yep,
something?
it's, you know, the scraper you use at the kitchen
Yeah,
sink.
that's what it looked
all
like.
it is.
Okay.
Looks like grass, you know, as far as they know.
Now, as far as, I know this is really sped up, but do you have any correlation? Is it like 100 times normal speed or?
That's my student. This guy doing it in the lab.
What?
What was the velocities? Was it, what did they end up coming out at? Remember? Well, what's the scale difference? Remember what you guys scale it at? 10 to 1? 100 to 1? 20 to 1. 20 to 1, yeah. 20 to 1, I think.
What are you telling?
Yeah. And if anybody wants to email me, I will send you the lab I use. I stole it. I'll pass it on.
Working with your email address.
Huh?
Working with your email address.
Well, it's supposed to be up there, but here's my card.
Somebody wants one. Get two of them.
The information free or
Yep.
without you?
Well, you know.
Any donation would be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, he's close. He's right by my place. He's right down the street from me.
Yeah.
I have one?
Yeah.
Over here.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, I mean they're really fun and to see kids' faces.
Yeah, right.
And then when they start putting the dye in, I mean, it's just like us. I mean, we talk about it every day, but how does it really move? And you can actually get it if you pump right and you inject right. You can actually see this nice little pool line going down and coming right up through your well. And if you put it in the well after the contamination there, you can see you can actually get reverse flow and show both of them coming up by just pumping. And, please play, add dye. The idea here is the kids learn a little bit too. Huh?
What kind of glue to glue the well to the super glue?
Well, you can use super glue, but they also have another glue which is right next door to it. It's actually for acrylic.
Okay.
It's at Home Depot. I mean, you can go there and it says it's acrylic glue. Because I think what it does is actually almost welds the two together. It melts one of them. But you can, almost every, I won't say major city, because I don't know what that means, but most places have a place that makes acrylic something. Because they make, windows, they make everything else. You go down there, they can buy the tubing and 10-foot things. It's not very expensive, but you can buy a 10-foot, make whatever sections you want to.
Can you drill holes at the
You can. You could. What we did was because we're using such a small diameter one, but I have some of mine that made. I took PVC, one of the screens, it's already plotted for me. Cut it in half with a bandsaw, and just glued that in. So, and that was just right in the middle, so I could show flow to one well. The idea is having something see-through, sand, and a bunch of other things you just play with. That's the easiest part. Yeah, the hardest part is going to be for anybody now. It's not putting the tubes in. It's trying to put this part in, the top. Because you got to kind of buy a couple different pieces. But how much of that you really need is about the. You mean you just have it straight, open on the top, and just have the tubes in there. That's what most people want that cake are. You can pump fast. You can pump slow. Yep. Yep. We've done that too. In fact, with the fish tank, you can either try to put a wall in there, make it really thin. I've just been using the whole fish tank. And so at that point in time, I put my sand in, everything else, dig a little hole, put it in, gravel pack it. Now I got one wall in the center.
Ideally, I guess the bigger it is, the harder it is to small.
It is, and then of course the other problem is the heavier it gets. The more sand you put in it, the heavier it gets. Is it? Well, is it actually, well, let's put it this way, is it artesian or is it actually above it? Let's put it that way. It may not be, because part of it is maybe my water level in here is not high enough, but, so is it higher than the other one? Is it at least upward gradient? Can you show it's under pressure? Yeah, it should be, right? It's a lowographer, so it's not flowing. It actually is flowing. This is my old one.
I turn on.
Yeah, we put a hole in it, but I don't know why. For some reason, we put a hole down at the base of it. So as long as you show it's higher, wood coming around the above the ground surface. This one I've had for 20 years. It basically allows water either, if it's open, water can come in here and go out the bottom. So I'm basically keeping that confined aquifer at basically the same pressure as the unconfined. As soon as I close it down, now it has to force the water. It fills up there, building up the pressure. Where if I release it, releases the pressure going to the bottom. I have two of those I can play with.
So did you build these things, or?
I built that one. Okay. It was one of the last models they made at the university. So I stole it. Yeah. I deserved it. But this one I purchased, or the university purchased.
What was it? What's it basic? What is it built for?
The education.
No. Yeah. If you went there, this is the same thing model.
Yep. This is called the sand tank model. You can buy it. I know Envisions is one company, but I think Ward's you can buy them a couple different places. So, yeah. Well, when you were pumping, you were creating that. You just have to be able to measure. You have to measure it, so you have to have two people. One guy pumping, and you look at, you've got 3 wells next to each other, and you pump the middle one. You can actually see the drawdown to them and stuff. So it's part of the design. You'll see water levels drop in this guy. The other thing is Clorox spilling on people. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Just classification.
I closed it back down, so. All right.
For me? Yeah, a chance of that. The other problem too is you drive over here, the change in pressure. What happened with these little guys? That's why all of a sudden when I took the time, all of a sudden they started. Okay, great. You think I've learned that because it's like the 3rd year I've taught these little sand tanks to everybody, and you think I've learned that. But like I said, please play. I got some red dye. If you guys need some more, I don't know what's our little floats out there doing.
We're real pink over here.
Have you ever made one where you've got a creek that's the creek is connected to the aquifer, and
Right here.
the desired solids are slowing the water down and clouding the water table?
You can, there again, I had them, so we've used, we put a little clay along here because we knew the lake itself was, I won't say completely perched, but it certainly had a very tight interface at the bottom there, so you tighten it up so you can show the leakage across that lake and the groundwater was very slow. But that was a real easy one. You just put a little clay along the bottom there. Or the other one I've done is just tape. There's holes in the bottom of this one. Just tape them. You know, instead of having 10 holes, I have 2. And you'll show how it slows down. And the idea is flexibility and creative mind.
Have you ever built a tank that shows the effects of injection?
Well, you know, we essentially can show that here if I had to. Next year when I do this, I'm sure Kathy Butch will sucker me into it again. I'll promise to have my little windshield wiper pumps, because there I can actually just put it on here and just start, injecting. Because you can now, the problem is it's slow and you can't really see the impacts of it. That one, I can keep a consistent pumping rate on it, so I can either do injection in one and pump another one and actually show how they're doing. So
I do a lot of direct push injection work. There's different techniques.
Yep.
Some will dry out the bottom of the rod, some won't do
yeah.
that.
Well, that's one reason why we had actually these guys was to try to show some of that. These were Vados models to start with, try to see whether or not we can get, injection out or in, and then we'll go flood the system and see what happens when we're below the water table. And one of those things where the student got about halfway through and decided he didn't want to do it anymore. It was too much work. So,
The reason of that, we had a client, big project, or something like
right.
We couldn't find out everything cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're kind of doing that a little bit here, because these are all pedometers. They're only open, unless that guy goes out, it's very thin. It's an open scroll there, which is similar to rocks. So you kind of show that, different elevations if you want to. The problem is that you pulled out, the question is the whole hole is still open or not.
Now we have a new tool that will inject the
Right.
Basic understanding, then you can start getting. But it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it is, and like I said, the little kids, these just start, the look in their eyes, all of a sudden they walk out and they all think they're groundwater professionals, they probably are. So, but they finally get I get comments from the parents when I see them at baseball and stuff, they go, what the heck did you do? My son now wants to be a groundwater professional, he understands all our water is coming from here and stuff, what the heck did you do to him? I want him to be a lawyer or something, So.
Sometimes when you go to the reading, you're doing top down.
But they're not that hard. Like I said, you can make your own, or you can just go to the cheap route. The other thing in Vision, I think it's on Vision, it's not for the thing up there. They have used ones. So you can pick up those. They have a little section on their webpage. It's really crappy webpage, but nonetheless they're there.
How large scales are they good as far as you want to send?
Yeah, there's some sand takes that we built back at Western that they're doing. They use kerosene as a contaminant to track some things. Western Michigan University, and it's about the size of this table. And that kerosene in that tank for 20 years. It was supposed to be done, but you started seeing the microorganisms growing and stuff, which shouldn't have been there. It was native. It was sterilized sand put in it. So we just started left it going, and so now you take a picture every couple of years. And, someday it'll come.
Yeah.
Yes. But then you get something that's lighter than water. You put oil in them. The problem with oil is you get a lot of biological things and stuff. But to go back to yours, Dennis Williams, who works for, he's a professor, did a lot of work with Roscoe Moss. His laboratory / office has a sand tank that is 15 feet wide, 15 feet tall, by maybe 20 feet deep. And he has full screens in each corner. And he can pump hundreds of gallons a minute through his. So, so you can compare the louver screens versus wire wrap and whatever else he's doing. That stuff is huge. You walk in, it's taller than you are. So scale is just, what you can do with it. Yeah. 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 Exactly, yeah. Other questions? Thoughts? Keep playing? You're enjoying this? Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That's the thing is, be a kid. When you drain them. Yeah, and like today, what I'll do is we'll just drain them pretty quick, but I'll get the water out as fast as we can. I'll take it back to California, and then over the weekend, I'll flush fresh water to get rid of the rest of the time. So if I have enough time, I'll drain this water out, add water, some fresh to it, or keep this going until there's no dying stuff.
Do you have any membranes that differentiate those layers?
No. There's, just trying to show glacial geology can have, little pieces of stuff scattered throughout, which it does. But there again, as much as your imagination. And I know that this group of people were pretty imaginative.
How would you do a fracture system?
We use styrofoam. Yeah, because you put in the bottom of this slot. You can make some of them connected and some not. Because like fracture flow, some fractures never touch anything else. Who cares then, right? So you can make studies. So you just notch it on the front side, shove that down in there, and put sand on the top of it.
Sorry, limestone.
Yeah. So it really comes back to your imagination, what you're trying to show. I can tell you that work for some consultants who take this to their clients. They borrow mine. And then they go and they have like a little party with their client. They show them this because the clients don't know what's going on, or lawyers. I've got a little short course.
What courts generally accept the
Well, that's what I was asking Dan. Is I've never gotten any of mine actually in front of a jury because they ultimately come back and say, "Well, did you use the material from the system?" Well, that's not the point.
Yeah, right.
The point is to try to show how things move.
Visually, it would really help a jury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to judge the whole sleep.
But civil action with tender, they got one in front of that jury, so it didn't help, but it did. So there is some place for it, but nothing else. Just teaching the lawyers or public officials. Why is their well field getting high in nitrates? Well, okay, this is where your well field's at. Here's how things move. So it could be.
I just wanted to work at the federal level for a mounding effects of the wind.
Mm-hmm.
It worked really well.
Yeah. Okay.
Could you build it with native material?
Yeah. Just remember that Wisconsin story.
Yeah.
You can put it in there. If it takes an hour to get across, that's the challenge. That's one reason why we just finally went. Make it a little wider, put a little bit more material in there, and that way, you're not sitting there for days watching it for it to go.